welcome to Take a Beat. My name is Tirza. I'm the digital pastor here at IES. And Take a Beat is an IES podcast where we invite you to pause, talk about things that matter, only to launch back on the beat. And so this week, we have Pastor Anthony here with us. Hello, Pants.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank
Welcome
you.
back, actually. You've been here before. So Pastor Anthony is the encounter pastor at IES. He also ministers to a lot of the young adults, but also you also marry a lot of people.
Yes.
Like officiate weddings and do premarital counseling. What else do you do? By the way, this is a plug. If you want to get married, contact Pastor Anthony. What else do you do?
I dabble in just dealing with the volunteers at church overall. Yeah.
Cool. Actually, what I wanted to also say was if you see the Bible and the description of Absalom, he has the most beautiful hair. I feel like that works for Pastor Anthony. His hair is better than mine. So if any of those shampoo commercials want to reach out to Pants.
Open for endorsement.
Well, we have been going through our Change and Changing series, and this time around, I think this is session 2 in the small groups, but it's like third on our sermon series.
Yep.
We're talking about going from stressed to blessed. And so you minister to a lot of people. What are some of the things that you have seen causes stress in people's lives?
I think several factors. The first one is the what ifs of the future, the unknown future, especially for young adults, like who are they going to marry and what kind of career they're going to have. And related to that is a lot of family issues. So for example, if he or she has decided that they're going to date someone, are their parents going to approve or not approve? So those are a lot of factors. So career and relationship, love, a lot of the what ifs, the unknowns of the future. Yeah.
So what about you? Like, what causes you stress?
What causes me stress?
Being on this podcast causes me stress.
I think a lot of things that causes me stress is things that are beyond my control. Things that other people do or circumstance, and because I have no control over it, so therefore it stresses me out, or I'm not fully understanding why things are happening, and so that creates stress. I mean, for example, I think a lot of moms can relate to me. When your helper leaves and you have to find a new helper, causes me lots of stress. Yes. Yeah.
And I can relate, not the helper part, but I can relate to you in terms of like the whole unknown thing. I feel like it's a very human thing, right? When there are things that is beyond your control, that is maybe depending on other people or other people's reaction to different things, and so that causes us stress.
Yes.
Another fun fact about Pastor Anthony: we're neighbors, different building, same apartment complex. Okay, so how do you gauge stress? Like, how do you know when? Because stress is part of life. Everyone goes through it. But how do you know when it has gotten to like danger level, like it's overwhelming?
So there are two kinds of stress. The first one is the good kind. When you cross the street and you do the Jedi thing, but then the taxi keeps on going, and so you have to jump away. That's good kind of stress, the adrenaline. I think the second kind of stress, the bad stress, is the chronic stress. Is that when you're just constantly continuing thinking about it nonstop and it just consumes you. When you can't fall asleep at night and you keep on thinking about it, or just during the day you're thinking about it, and it just it just takes over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, with that, for some people, it's, when you said it takes over, it really takes over. It's debilitating.
Yeah. A word that we can use is being hijacked. So think that, when if a pirate hijacks a boat, you lose control over it. So stress hijacks your mind, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your mood. And so that's when I personally know that when it's a bit too much, is that it has hijacked all of who I am. Yeah.
So how does, when you get hijacked, like you were mentioning, hijacked by stress, what's the impact on your life, your relationships, your etc.?
Number one, my wife. Number two, my kids. Number three, maybe the people at home. Usually I'm very short fused, and I can tell that I'm triggered easily. So some things that shouldn't trigger me, it triggers me. And so those are the indicators that I know that the stress is too much. So I take it out on others, that's for sure.
Yeah. And especially you're dealing with a lot of young adults, and I feel like, especially, for me, when I was a young adult.
We're still young.
Yeah, sure.
We're adults and we're young.
That's right. I feel like it takes a while to learn when you're like, oh, this is impacting my life.
Yeah.
So how do you communicate that with your young adults that you pastor?
I think, again, knowing your triggers and knowing what your coping mechanism for stress. Some people stress eat, some people impulse shop, some people exercise, if it's a good thing. Some people run to not Jesus, but to Jack or to Jose.
Okay.
Or to, if you know, you know.
Yes.
To Morgan or, yeah.
That's right. But no, actually, that's a good thing to talk about. What are some of the things that, yes, you mentioned it, but what are some of the things that you do to cope with stress?
Usually I try to play tennis. I stress eat. Usually try to eat something that I really enjoy. And most of the time that, I try to find someone that I can talk to. And so I think out loud, so therefore I need people so that I can process with, people that can hear me out, and people who can speak into my life. And so it's, exercise, spending time with my kids. Those are the things that help me, just to relieve some stress in a good way.
For me, do I stress eat? Oh yes, carbs. But also I think, when you were saying shopping, I think having things that are in your control, you can control what you shop and what you get. For me, actually, one of the things that I do is dye my hair. So when I have no control over other things, I dye my hair because that's something I can control. Interesting.
Oh.
Just so you know. But when does these coping mechanisms, because there are good coping mechanisms and there are bad but not as good. And so when do these coping mechanisms become debilitating or, becomes bad?
I think it has a lot to do with self-awareness, right? So if you know your triggers and you know your coping mechanisms, having other people around you so that they can speak into your life or kind of be your mirrors, basically, your guardrails. I think it's really important because oftentimes you don't see it and you don't realize it until it's a little bit too late. But allowing people in your life, either for me, my wife, or my team, to speak into my life has really helped. Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because all of us have different circles of friends, and what I've experienced is there are some friendships that are not good for stress. Like they rather than speak, like you said,
Yeah.
speak truth
Yeah.
into my life. They're the ones who's like, oh, have you tried
Yeah.
my
Yeah. Yeah.
friends
Yeah.
Jose and
Yeah, we need to find friends who love Christ more than they love us. And we need to find friends who will speak truth into our life and to say what we need to hear. Um, yeah.
I think one of the things that you mention a lot, I've heard you say this, you want friends who stab you in the front.
Yes, stab you in the front. You need friends
What
to
does
do
that
that.
mean?
Meaning, if nobody likes to get stabbed in the back, and real friends, if there's something that's happening in your life that's not right, or you're not doing something or behaving in a certain way, you want to have some friends who just tell you straight up in your face that, hey, that this is not right. And so that's what I mean. Yeah.
So what if someone comes up to you and say, Pastor Anthony, I don't have people like that in my life. What should I do?
Yeah, I talked about this often too. I think the principle is that if you want to have a good friend, you just be a good friend. And a lot of times we want a good friends, we want mentors, we want peer or co-mentors, but we're not willing to be one, right? I think the principle is that we need to be one in order to receive one, or we need to pray and ask God to send those people in our lives.
Is there a good place to start? Like, is there any good place to start making some of these good friendships?
Yeah, I think you need to find one who is your peers, right? Because they're in the same stage of life. They understand what you're going through. They're going through the same things. But I think it's really important to find internal and external pure peer mentors or friends, because when it's like people within the church, they know you, the context, and the people that you're talking about, they're very familiar, and so sometimes you can't share too much, so you need someone who's outside of the organization or outside of the church or outside of your circle of friends, per se. So you need to have two kinds: the internal people who knows, who's familiar, and external as well, that they don't have an emotional attachment to what you are sharing.
Yeah. So let me ask you personally this, because you're a pastor, and as a pastor, as a minister, you lead people, and so when you were yourself coping with, I need to, cope with some stress in my life, do you have these? Because sometimes you can't share with like your flock.
Yeah.
Like we want to be vulnerable, but we want
Yeah.
to be an open book. But there are things that you're currently processing that you can't share with your flock. Do you have other people that you share with?
Yeah, I think majority of the people that I do share with, it's from an internal base. My wife, some of the deacons here at church, and I share a lot to my team. Some of the things that I'm actually needing to learn is not to overshare, and to really understand if I'm stressed and I need to vent, is the person able to receive what I'm trying to communicate to them? So I'm learning and relearning that. And so a lot of the people that I do share with is internal wise, but I do have some friends externally that I do share with as well.
Cool. So one of the things that, especially in this day and age, and maybe young adults and teenagers, what I've seen is they vent on social media, like Reddit and TikTok, Instagram. They rant or they write snide posts about things. Like, what do you think about venting in that way?
I personally wouldn't do it, but I understand why people would. I think I don't know if that's the right terminology, garbage in, garbage out. If you are venting out into the social media, I think we need to filter our responses as well. Or
Yeah.
people are replying. I think it might be self-serving that you just needed to let it all out. But then in letting it all out, you are opening yourself to having all these feedback from all sorts of different people who don't know the context, who don't know you, and that could actually snowball into something that's even worse than the actual thing that you're posting about.
Yeah, it actually can be pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
Like the way you mentioned it, like being open to other people speaking into your life who probably don't have any business speaking into your life.
Yeah.
I think that's really good. So when we talk about faith and our relationship with God, how does that relate to us coping with stress and stresses in our lives?
Yeah. I've learned this from actually the Change and Changing, Transforming by Rick Warren. We did this several years back. And I am a feeler. My feeling dominate a lot of who I am and how I make the decision and things like that. And Pastor Rick says that we don't actually have to agree with what we feel, right? And there's a checklist that he gives us, and I gotta ask, why do I feel the way I feel? What's the reason behind it? And then the next question is what I'm feeling actually true, or is it just true to me? I feel so-and-so, this circumstance or this environment is like this. Is it just all in my head, or is it actually happening?
Yeah.
Right? And the third question is that if I continue to feel this way, is it going to be healthy for me? Is it going to be good for me or not? Is it going to make me better and get what I want, or is it going to make me become bitter or angry or have resentment? And so I got to go down to this checklist, and if it's these feelings are not healthy for me and it's not good for me, the next question is I have to ask God to take away these feelings. And sometimes we don't want these feelings to go away. We like to camp out in our misery or our stress or the things that self-pity or things like that, and we don't want God to take it away, and we continue to dwell in it, which is not good. And so knowing that God wants us to have a healthy emotions, healthy thoughts, when we surrender ourselves to Christ, we surrender our emotions and our thoughts and our wills to Jesus as well. And so if our thoughts and our emotions and our will is controlled by ourselves, then Jesus cannot be our Lord. And so understanding what stresses me out and the feelings and the emotions and the mood that goes behind that, going through that checklist, and at the end of it, if it's not good for me, asking God to take it away, it's really important for me, something that I had to learn in the past, or continue to learn right now.
Which I actually really, really appreciate you sharing, because especially sharing that you are a feeler. A lot of men especially, they're not feelers, or they're feelers but they don't want to tell anyone that they're feelers.
Yes.
And so are feelings bad? Because a lot of people tend to be like, feelings are bad, and so you need to be logical, so how does that work, especially in terms of what God says?
Well, we're created in His image. We know that in Genesis. And because we're created in His image, that we do feel, we have emotion. God's, we're supposed to worship Him and love Him with all of our hearts, right?
That's right.
All of us. And God doesn't like worship that's just a lip sync.
Yeah.
And so therefore, knowing that we have feelings and we have these emotions, and it's actually, God has given it to us. And I think it's good to acknowledge that But it's also good to learn how to control your feelings and your mood, your emotions, and instead of it controlling you. Yeah.
So when you have an emotion and it's caused like with your stresses and things like that, and it's something that you need to give up, what are some of the practical things that you can suggest all of us to think about or to do when you're trying to maybe struggle with giving up that feeling to God?
Yeah. I think the first thing that I've learned is to sleep on it. I feel a certain way or my emotions are high. In the past, I would escalate it. I need to do something about it. I need to fix it like right now. I need to talk to the person right away.
Okay.
This happened, I need to get in touch with them, or that happened, I need to, because I'm a fast-paced kind of person, and so I want to get things done fast, and I don't like to linger.
Yeah.
But I've learned that when it comes to my emotions and my thoughts and my feelings, my stress, that it's good not to escalate it right away. It's good to sleep on it and see what a good night's sleep or any kind of sleep would do the next morning. So when I'm about to do something, say something, I usually run it through my wife, and then she would tell me, why don't you sleep on it or just chill for a little while. Usually it works out well. So I think that's one thing that I've learned, and I think it's a good practice, is not to escalate things right away and just allow God to deal with your emotions and your thoughts, and kind of just like to take a time out with God and allow him to minister and see how you feel the next day. Yeah.
So that reminds me of that story in, I think, First Kings or Second Kings, where Elijah was like telling God, like, kill me now, like, I want to die. And God gave him food and told him to sleep, and then he's all better.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would suggest, like, okay, sleep on it? What would be another thing? Just something practical for people.
Yeah, definitely sleep on it. Definitely get a second opinion, or at least, tell somebody else to see their thought and allow them to speak into your life. Pray about it, ask God, obviously. I think those are the three main things. Take a time out, do something that's completely different. Go for a run, or just
go for a
shop, or eat a nice juicy steak. Do something that's gonna make you feel good.
Yeah.
And so I think taking your mind away from it and allowing yourself to step away, it's really important.
I think those are really, really good things. And so thank you so much, Pants, for being here and for sharing that. And guys, if you need a community, especially if, since Pastor Anthony is here, if you're a young adult and you need a community, we will have the information in the description so you can get connected with Encounter. But also, if you're not a young adult and you want to be connected with our community here at IES, please reach out. We have an email, takeabeat@ies.online, that you can reach out to and say, hey, I want to be part of a community, and we will connect you. And we're here. I know, like, we have other pastors on staff that would love to talk to you and encourage you and pray for you. We have a prayer team at IES. But friends, again, remember what Pastor Anthony mentioned, sleep on it. Talk to people who will pour into your lives, people who love Jesus a little bit more than you do. And then maybe take some time, like, do some other things that would take your mind off it. I love the juicy steak one. I think that's a personal favorite. But again, thank you so much, Pans, for joining us. And thank you for joining us. And don't miss a beat. We'll see you next time on Take a Beat.